Jake Miller pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship. Stars filled the black space around them. In the distance, a huge crystal structure floated like a giant diamond. That was his new home for the next 2 years. "Stop looking so excited," Captain Lisa Brooks said from the seat behind him. "You know what this place is, right?" Jake turned around and grinned. "The Valkyrie Academy, the toughest fighting school in the galaxy. Only girls have ever gone there before." Lisa shook her head. 4 out of 10 students don't make it out alive. "Jake, this isn't a game." "I know." Jake's smile never left his face. "Sounds fun." The transport ship moved closer to the academy. Jake could see it was even bigger than he thought. The crystal walls were clear in some places and dark in others. Strange lights moved inside like living things. Jake was 17 years old. He came from a small farming colony on Earth. His family grew corn and wheat. Nothing exciting ever happened there. When the government picked him for this mission, everyone was surprised. Even Jake was surprised. The Galactic Coalition had many different alien species. Most of them were stronger than humans. Some could read minds. Others could walk through walls or control fire. Humans were new to the group. Many aliens thought humans were weak. The Valkyrie Academy trained the best female fighters in the galaxy. No male had ever been allowed inside. The academy was run by aliens who believed only females could be true warriors. When Earth asked to send someone there, it caused a big fight among the alien leaders. "Why did they pick me?" Jake asked Lisa for the 10th time. Lisa looked at her tablet. "Your test scores showed something they called adaptive resilience. You don't give up even when things look impossible. Also, you smile a lot." "That's a weird reason to send someone to warrior school." "Everything about this mission is weird, Jake." The ship docked with the academy. Jake picked up his small bag. He didn't bring much. The academy would give him everything he needed, if he lived long enough to use it. They walked through a tube that connected the ship to the academy. The walls were made of some kind of metal that felt warm to touch. Strange symbols glowed along the sides. "Remember the rules," Lisa said. "Don't start fights. Don't show off. Try to make friends if you can. And for the love of Earth, stop smiling so much. You're making everyone nervous." Jake tried to look serious. It lasted about 5 seconds. They reached a large room filled with the strangest group Jake had ever seen. There were girls who looked almost human but had blue skin and silver hair. Others had wings or extra arms. One girl was completely see-through except for her glowing red eyes. All of them stared at Jake. "Great," Lisa whispered. "This is going well." A tall woman walked over to them. She wore a black uniform with silver badges. Her hair was white as snow, but she looked young. Jake guessed she wasn't human. "I am Commander Vera Kane," she said. Her voice was cold. "You must be the human male." "Jake Miller, ma'am." Jake held out his hand to shake. Commander Kane looked at it like it might explode. "We don't do that here," she said. "Follow me." They walked through hallways filled with more strange sights. Jake saw rooms where girls fought with weapons made of light. In another room, someone was lifting weights that looked like small cars. Everything was bigger and scarier than Jake expected. "Your room is here," Commander Kane said, stopping at a door. "You will share it with Zara Nightshade. She is from the Shadowkin species. Try not to annoy her." The door opened. Inside was a girl about Jake's age. She had black hair and pale skin. When she saw Jake, her eyes turned completely black. "You put a male in my room?" she said to Commander Kane. Her voice sounded like winter wind. "It was the only space available," Commander Kane replied. "Deal with it." Zara looked at Jake. "I can phase through walls and make your organs leave your body without making holes. Sleep with one eye open, human." Jake's grin got bigger. "Nice to meet you too. I'm Jake." Zara stared at him. Then she walked right through the wall and disappeared. "She seems nice," Jake said. Commander Kane almost smiled. "Almost. Dinner is in 1 hour. Try to survive until then." Lisa hugged Jake goodbye. "Be careful," she whispered. "Remember, you're not just representing yourself. You're representing all of humanity. No pressure, Jake said. After Lisa left, Jake unpacked his few things. The room was simple. 2 beds, 2 desks, and a window that looked out at the stars. He had seen bigger closets back home. A loud bell rang through the academy. Jake guessed it was time for dinner. He left his room and followed other students toward a large cafeteria. The dining hall was huge. Tables filled the space, and each one seemed to be for a different alien species. Jake saw the blue-skinned girls sitting together. The winged ones had their own area. Everyone kept their own kind close. Jake got his food from a machine that scanned his hand. It gave him something that looked like meat and vegetables, but the colors were all wrong. The meat was purple and the vegetables were glowing. He looked around for a place to sit. Every table full of girls stopped talking when he walked by. Their stares felt like tiny knives. Finally, Jake sat at an empty table. Within seconds, a girl, with lightning dancing around her fingers, sat across from him. "I am Kira Stormwind of the Etherian Empire," she said. Lightning crackled in her hair. "My people have been warriors for 10,000 years. We have never been defeated in battle." "That's awesome," Jake said, taking a bite of the purple meat. It actually tasted pretty good. "I'm Jake. My people have been farmers for about 300 years. We grow really good corn." Kira blinked. She clearly expected a different answer. "You dare mock me?" Lightning grew brighter around her. "Not at all. Corn is serious business. You ever try to protect a crop from space locusts? Those things are scary." More girls gathered around the table. Jake realized he was becoming the evening's entertainment. "What are your fighting skills, human?" asked a girl with red skin and small horns. "Well, I can fix a broken tractor engine with a paperclip and some wire. That takes skill." "What weapons do you use?" asked another. "Mostly a wrench." "Sometimes a hammer." The girls looked confused. This wasn't how warriors talked. A new voice cut through the chatter. "Enough." Everyone turned to see a girl with silver hair and gold eyes. She moved like a dancer, but Jake could tell she was dangerous. Very dangerous. "I am Amy Cross, first-year class leader. You are the human male we heard about." "Guilty as charged," Jake said. "Do you know why you're here?" Amy asked. Jake thought about it. "Honestly, I think your leaders want to prove that humans don't belong in warrior school. They figure if I fail, they can keep Earth out of the important stuff." The cafeteria got very quiet. "And what do you think about that?" Amy asked. Jake finished his purple meat and smiled his biggest smile yet. "I think it's going to be really fun to prove them wrong." For the first time since Jake arrived, some of the girls smiled back. The rest looked like they wanted to kill him. Jake decided he was going to like it here. Jake's first morning at the academy started with an alarm that sounded like a dying wail. He jumped out of bed and looked around. Zara was already gone. Her bed was made so perfectly, it looked like no one had ever slept in it. Jake got dressed in the academy uniform they gave him. It was black with silver lines that glowed faintly. The material felt strange against his skin, like it was alive. The dining hall was busy with students eating breakfast. Jake got something that looked like eggs but tasted like chicken. The academy. Food was weird, but it wasn't bad. "You're the human boy," said a voice behind him. Jake turned to see a girl with short red hair and freckles. She looked almost human, but her eyes were too bright and she had an extra finger on each hand. "I'm Beth Taylor," she said. "I'm from New Geneva Colony. My family builds robots." "Nice to meet you, Beth. I'm Jake. My family grows plants." Beth sat down next to him. "Everyone's talking about you. Some girls think you're here to spy on us. Others think you're some kind of secret weapon." "What do you think?" Jake asked. "I think you're just a kid who got in over his head." Beth smiled. "I like that." After breakfast, Jake went to his first class. The room was huge and empty except for one chair in the center. A woman with 4 arms stood at the front. "I am Professor Stone," she said. "This is quantum combat theory. Today we learn how to fight in spaces that don't follow normal rules." Jake raised his hand. "What kind of rules?" "Rules like gravity, time, and whether or not walls are solid. Professor Stone touched a button on her desk. The room changed. Suddenly, Jake was floating in the air. The walls became see-through and he could see stars on all sides. Other students appeared in the space, some hanging upside down, others sideways. In quantum combat, Professor Stone said, your enemy might attack you from yesterday, or from inside a wall. You must learn to think in ways that hurt your brain. Jake tried to swim through the air toward a floating platform. He moved slowly, but he got there. Some of the other girls were much faster, flying or teleporting from place to place. Not bad for a first try, said a voice next to him. Jake turned to see Amy Cross floating nearby. She moved through the air like she was born for it. Thanks. This is definitely different from farm work. How so? Amy asked. She seemed genuinely curious. Well, on the farm, if something doesn't make sense, it's usually broken. Here, not making sense seems to be the point. Amy laughed. You might survive this place after all. The next class was even stranger. It was called Multi-Gravity Warfare. The teacher, a blue-skinned woman with tentacles for arms, made Jake fight, while gravity kept changing direction. One moment Jake was standing on the floor. The next he was falling toward the ceiling. Then gravity pulled him sideways into a wall. This is impossible, gasped a girl with wings. Even she was having trouble flying when gravity kept switching. Jake had an idea. Instead of fighting the changing gravity, he used it. When gravity pulled him toward a wall, he pushed off and let it carry him toward his target. When it switched again, he was already in motion. Clever, said the teacher. The human learns quickly. At lunch, Jake sat with Beth and a few other girls who seemed less interested in killing him. Amy Cross joined them, which surprised everyone. Why, are you sitting with us? Asked a green-skinned girl named Kate. He's interesting, Amy said. Most new students spend their first week crying or throwing up. He just smiles and adapts. It's just school, Jake said. Weird school, but still. School? School? Kira Stormwind had appeared behind Jake. Lightning danced around her fingers. This is not school, human. This is war preparation. We train here to fight and die for our people. I get that, Jake said. But you're still learning, right? That makes it school. Kira's lightning got brighter. Do not mock our purpose. I'm not mocking anything. I respect what you do here. I just don't think being serious all the time helps you learn better. And what would a farmer know about fighting? Kira demanded. Jake thought about this. Well, every year we fight bugs that want to eat our crops. Space storms that can destroy a harvest in minutes. Soil that won't grow anything no matter what we try. We lose sometimes, but we keep trying new things until we win. That is not the same as combat, Kira said. Maybe not, but fighting problems that want to kill your food sounds like fighting to me. Some of the girls around the table nodded. They understood what Jake meant. The afternoon brought Jake's biggest challenge yet. Psychic defense training. The instructor was a tall, thin woman whose eyes glowed white. I am Professor Mind, she said. Some of your enemies will try to attack your thoughts. Today you learn to protect your mind. She pointed at Jake. You first, human. Let me see your mental defenses. Jake felt something touch his thoughts. It felt like cold fingers crawling through his brain. The touch tried to push deeper, looking for his fears and secrets. Most students fought back by building walls in their minds. Jake tried something different. Instead of hiding from the mental probe, he opened his thoughts wide. The instructor jerked back like she had been burned. What did you do? You were looking for my fears, Jake said. So I showed you my happiest memories instead. My sister's wedding. The first time our crops grew after a bad year. My dog when he was a puppy. That is not how mental defense works, Professor Mind said. Did it work? Jake asked. Professor Mind was quiet for a moment. Yes, it worked very well. I could not find anything to attack. After classes, Jake went back to his room. Zara was there, sitting on her bed and reading a book written in symbols that hurt to look at. How was your first day? She asked without looking up. Pretty good. I only almost died twice. Zara looked at him. That is actually very good for a first day. Thanks, I think. The other students are talking about you, Zara said. Some think you are dangerous. Others think you are stupid. A few think you might be useful. What do you think? Jake asked. Zara was quiet for a long time. I think you are not what you appear to be. That night Jake lay in bed listening to the strange sounds the academy made. Metal creaking, energy humming, and occasionally something that sounded like distant singing. He thought about his day. The classes were hard but not impossible. The other students were starting to accept him, or at least not actively trying to kill him. He was surviving. But Jake knew the real tests were coming. The academy had a reputation for a reason. Soon he would face challenges that would test more than his ability to adapt. He fell asleep smiling anyway. The next morning brought news that made everyone nervous. Commander Kane stood in the dining hall and announced the first major test. Kren, 3 days all first-year students will face the nightmare dimension, she said. This is a pocket of space where your fears become real. You will spend 12 hours inside. Those who survive with their sanity intact will continue their training. The dining hall got very quiet. What happens to those who don't survive? Asked a brave student. Commander Kane's expression didn't change. We send their personal effects home to their families. Jake looked around at his classmates. For the first time since arriving, he saw real fear in their faces. These girls could control fire and lightning, phase through walls and fly through space, but the nightmare dimension scared them. What are you thinking about? Beth whispered to Jake. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he smiled his biggest smile. Yet I'm thinking this is about to get really interesting. The 3 days before the nightmare dimension test passed quickly. Jake spent his time learning everything he could about his classmates and their abilities. While other students trained with weapons and practiced combat moves, Jake watched and listened. He learned that Kira could control electricity, but it drained her energy quickly. Zara could phase through solid objects, but she had to hold her breath while doing it. Amy was incredibly fast and strong, but she needed perfect balance to use her speed effectively. Why are you watching us so much? Amy asked during combat. Practice. I'm learning, Jake said. You all have amazing abilities. I want to understand how they work. So you can find weaknesses to exploit? Kira demanded, sparks flying from her hair. So I can find ways to help, Jake replied. The girls looked confused. This wasn't how enemies thought. On the night before the test, Jake couldn't sleep. He walked through the academy halls, which were dimly lit by emergency lights. Most of the academy was quiet, but he could hear crying from some of the student rooms. He found Zara sitting in the observation deck looking out at the stars. Can't sleep either? Jake asked. Sleep is for those who are not afraid of their dreams, Zara said. Jake sat down next to her. What are you afraid of? Zara was quiet for a long time. My people live in shadows. We see things others cannot see. Sometimes those things see us back. That sounds scary. What about you, human? What fears will the nightmare dimension show? You? Jake thought about this. I'm afraid of letting people down. I'm afraid of being useless when someone needs help. I'm afraid of not being good enough. Those are strange fears for a warrior, Zara said. I'm not really a warrior, Jake admitted. I'm just a farm kid who got picked for something way bigger than he is. Then why do you smile so much? Jake looked out at the stars. Because being scared doesn't help anything, and there's always something good to find, even in bad situations. The next morning came too soon. All the first-year students gathered in a large chamber deep inside the academy. In the center of the room was a circle of black metal covered in glowing symbols. Commander Kane stood beside the circle. The nightmare dimension exists between normal space and the void where nightmares live. Your fears will take physical form. They will try to break your mind. You have 12 hours to survive. She looked directly at Jake. Some of you will not come back the same. Some will not come back at all. One by one, Students stepped into the circle and disappeared in flashes of dark light. Jake watched their faces before they vanished. All of them looked terrified. Finally, it was Jake's turn. "Good luck, human," Zara said quietly. Jake stepped into the circle. The world disappeared. He found himself standing in a twisted version of his family's farm. The sky was the wrong color, a sick yellow that hurt to look at. The corn in the fields was black and moved without wind. In the distance, his family's house was on fire. Jake started running toward the burning house. He could hear screaming from inside. His sister's voice, his parents calling for help. But as he ran, the house got farther away instead of closer. The screaming got louder and more desperate. "You're too late," said a voice behind him. Jake turned, to see himself, but wrong. This other Jake was taller, stronger, and wore the uniform of a real warrior. But his eyes were cold and empty. "You're not good enough," the other Jake said. "You never were. Everyone you care about will die because you're weak." "Maybe," Jake said. "But I have to try anyway." He started running toward the house again. This time, he didn't look back at the other Jake. He just focused on reaching his family. The house kept moving away, but Jake noticed something. Every time he took a step, the screaming got a little quieter. Not because his family was dying, but because they were calming down. Jake stopped running. "You're not real," he said to the burning house. "My family isn't really in danger." The house flickered like a broken video screen. "But you are real," Jake said, turning to face the other Jake. "You're my fear of not being good enough. And you know what? Maybe you're right. Maybe I'm not good enough." The other Jake smiled cruelly. "Finally, you understand." "But being good enough isn't the point," Jake continued. "The point is trying to help anyway. Even if you fail, at least you tried." The other Jake's smile faltered. "And you know what else?" Jake said, his own smile returning. "Failing doesn't make you useless. It just means you learned something for next time." The fake farm began to dissolve around them. The other Jake looked confused and angry. "This is not how it works," the other Jake said. "You should be running in terror. You should be broken by your inadequacy." "Sorry to disappoint you," Jake said, "but inadequacy just means there's room to grow." The other Jake began to fade. "I don't understand." "That's okay," Jake said. "Want me to explain it while we wait for the 12 hours to be up?" For the next several hours, Jake sat in the dissolving nightmare and talked to his own fears. He explained why being afraid was normal, why failing was part of learning, and why helping others was more important than being perfect. By the time the 12 hours ended, the other Jake was sitting next to him, looking less cruel and more confused. "I still think you're not good enough," the other Jake said. "That's fine," Jake replied. "You can keep me motivated to do better." When Jake appeared back in the chamber, he was still smiling. Around him, other students were emerging from their own tests. Some were crying, others looked like they had aged 10 years. A few were carried out unconscious. "How do you feel?" Commander Kane asked Jake. "Pretty good," Jake said. "I made a friend." Commander Kane stared at him. "You made a friend in the nightmare dimension?" "Sort of. I talked to my fears instead of fighting them. Turns out they just wanted to be heard." The other students, who had already emerged, stared at Jake like he had grown a second head. "That's impossible," whispered Beth, who looked exhausted and shaky. "The nightmares are supposed to torture you," added Amy, whose perfect hair was now a mess. "They tried," Jake said, "but torture only works if you're fighting it. I just listened instead." Over the next few hours, more students emerged. Kira came, back with burn marks on her uniform from fighting lightning versions of herself. Zara appeared looking pale and shaken, but intact. When all the survivors were accounted for, Commander Kane read the results. 15 students entered the nightmare. "Dimension," she announced. 13 survived. Of those 13, only one completed the test without showing signs of mental trauma. Everyone looked at Jake. "This is unprecedented," Commander Kane continued. In the history of the Academy, no student has ever emerged from their first nightmare test completely unaffected. That evening, word of Jake's success spread through the entire Academy. Students from higher years came to see the human boy who had befriended his own nightmares. "How did you do it?" asked a senior student with crystal skin. "I stopped trying to be brave," Jake said. "Instead, I just tried to be helpful." "That makes no sense," the crystal girl said. "A lot of things here don't make sense," Jake replied. "That doesn't mean they don't work." Later that night, Jake was back in his room when Zara appeared through the wall. "The upper year students are talking," she said. "About what?" "About you. Some think you cheated somehow. Others think you're not human at all." "What do you think?" Jake asked. Zara sat on her bed and studied Jake's face. "I think you are exactly what you appear to be. A farm boy who doesn't know when to give up. And I think that might be the most dangerous thing in this academy." Jake fell asleep that night still smiling. He didn't know that in a secure communication room far below, Commander Kane was sending a message to Earth. "The human is performing beyond all expectations," she typed. "He's not just surviving. He's changing how the other students think about combat and fear. Request immediate guidance on how to proceed." The response came back within an hour. "Continue observation. Do not interfere. This could change everything." Jake slept peacefully, unaware that his success was creating waves throughout the Galactic Coalition. Some alien leaders were impressed by human potential. Others were concerned about what humans might be capable of. But all of them were watching now, waiting to see what the smiling farm boy would do next. In her own room, Amy Cross lay awake thinking about what Jake had said. For the first time in her life, she wondered if there might be other ways to be strong besides fighting. The Academy would never be the same. 3 months after the Nightmare Dimension test, Jake had become something he never expected at the Academy: popular. Students who once wanted to kill him now asked for his help with their studies. His strange way of solving problems had proven useful in more situations than anyone predicted. But Jake didn't know that his success was creating problems in places far from the Academy. In a secret meeting room on the Coalition capital ship, alien leaders gathered around a holographic table. The discussion was heated. "The human is disrupting everything," said General Vex, a reptilian creature with scales that changed color when he was angry. Right now, they were bright red. "Our students are starting to question traditional combat methods." "Perhaps that's not a bad thing," replied Ambassador Trill, whose blue skin marked her as an Etherian. "Innovation in warfare could benefit us all." "Innovation?" General Vex's scales turned purple with rage. "He talks to his enemies instead of fighting them. He makes friends with nightmares. This is not innovation. This is madness." Admiral Stone, a four-armed military leader, leaned forward. "The Academy reports are concerning. Human psychological warfare techniques are spreading among our best students. If this continues, it could change the nature of galactic combat forever." "And what if it does?" Ambassador Trill asked. "Maybe change is needed. Change that gives humans an advantage over species that have been warriors for millennia." General Vex slammed his clawed hand on the table. "Unacceptable." Admiral Stone was quiet for a moment. "There may be a solution. The final crucible is approaching." The room fell silent. Every leader knew about the final crucible, the Academy's most dangerous test. Students were dropped alone on Thanatos 9, a planet designed to kill anything that landed on it. They had 30 days to reach the extraction point. More students died in the final crucible than all other tests combined. "You want to ensure the human fails?" Ambassador Trill said. "It wasn't a question. I want to test human methods against impossible odds," Admiral Stone replied. "If the human succeeds, we accept that their ways have merit. If he fails, we use it as proof that humans don't belong in advanced military training," General Vex finished. "I like this plan." Meanwhile, Jake was completely unaware of the political storm he had created. He was too busy trying to survive. Professor Mind's advanced psychic combat class. "Today we practice mental warfare against multiple opponents," Professor Mind announced. You will face 3 psychic attacks at once while trying to complete a complex puzzle. Jake felt 3 different minds pressing against his thoughts. One tried to fill him with rage. Another pushed waves of fear into his consciousness. The third attempted to make him forget what he was doing. While his classmates built mental walls and fought back with their own psychic energy, Jake did something different. He invited all 3 attacking minds into his thoughts and started a conversation. "Hi there," he thought at the rage inducer. "You're trying to make me angry, right? That's interesting. Why anger instead of sadness?" The psychic attack faltered as the attacker became confused by Jake's response. "And you," Jake thought at the fearbringer. "You're really good at making scary images. But did you know that the same techniques could probably create really beautiful dreams?" By the end of the exercise, Jake had not only completed his puzzle, but had actually made the 3 psychic attackers laugh. Professor Mind stared at the results in disbelief. "How do you keep doing this?" she asked. "Doing what?" Jake replied, turning combat into conversation. Jake thought about this. Maybe because talking usually works better than fighting? I mean, fighting is sometimes necessary, but it should probably be the last choice, not the first. After class, Amy walked with Jake toward the dining hall. "The senior students are nervous about you," she said. "Why?" "Because you're changing how people think. Some of the upper year girls are trying your methods instead of traditional combat techniques." "Is that bad?" Jake asked. "It is if you're a senior who's built your reputation on being the most feared fighter in school," Amy replied. "There's talk that some of them want to challenge you directly." "Challenge me to what?" "Combat. Real combat. Not practice exercises where the weapons are set to stun." Jake stopped walking. "They want to actually hurt me?" "Some of them want to prove that. Human methods don't work when your life is really on the line." That evening, Jake's concerns about senior students became reality. He was in the library studying quantum physics when 3 older girls surrounded his table. The leader was tall with silver hair and eyes like ice. Her uniform had gold markings. That showed she was a 4th-year student. "I am Nova Sterling," she said. "I heard you think talking is better than fighting." "It usually is," Jake said, not looking up from his book. "Stand up," Nova commanded. Jake looked up at her. "Why?" "Because I'm going to show you what happens when talking fails." Other students in the library began backing away. Jake noticed that even the senior students looked nervous. "Okay," Jake said, closing his book and standing up. "What do you want?" "To talk about." Nova's eyes began to glow with psychic energy. "I want to talk about pain." Jake felt Nova's mind slam into his thoughts like a hammer. The psychic attack was unlike anything he had experienced in class. This wasn't practice. Nova was actually trying to hurt him. Pain shot through Jake's skull. He fell to his knees as Nova's psychic assault continued. Around them, other students watched in horror. "You see?" Nova said, her voice echoing strangely. "When someone really wants to hurt you, your friendship tactics are useless." Jake's vision blurred as the psychic pain intensified. For the first time since arriving at the academy, his smile disappeared. But instead of fighting back or trying to block the attack, Jake did something that surprised everyone, including Nova. He opened his mind completely and shared his memory of the worst day of his life. Nova suddenly found herself experiencing Jake's memory of the day his grandfather died. She felt Jake's grief, his helplessness, and his desperate wish that he could have done something to help. But she also felt something else, Jake's decision to honor his grandfather's memory by helping others, even when he was afraid. The psychic attack stopped abruptly. Nova staggered backward, tears streaming down her face. I felt," she stammered. "You felt my worst day," Jake said, standing up slowly. "But you also felt what I learned from it. Pain doesn't have to make you cruel. It can make you kind, instead." Nova stared at him. "But I was trying to break your mind." "I know. And I showed you my broken heart, not to make you stop, but to help you understand that broken things can still work. Sometimes they work better." The library was completely silent. Nova, who was known as one of the most ruthless students in the academy, was crying. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "That's okay," Jake said. "Want me to explain it? We could get some food and talk." Nova looked around at the other students watching them. Her reputation as a feared warrior was probably ruined. But as she looked at Jake's genuine offer of friendship, she realized she didn't care. "Yes," she said quietly. "I think I would like that." Word of Jake's encounter with Nova spread through the academy faster than light speed. The boy who had befriended his own nightmares had now turned one of the academy's most dangerous students into an ally. But unknown to Jake, his growing influence had attracted attention from the deadliest corners of the galaxy. 3 students had received secret orders from their home governments. Their mission was simple: ensure that Jake Miller did not survive the final crucible. The test was only weeks away. Soon Jake would face his greatest challenge yet, not just surviving a planet designed to kill him, but doing it while being hunted by trained assassins. But for now, Jake sat in the dining hall with Nova, teaching her about corn farming and listening to her stories about growing up on a psychic warrior world. Around them, other students watched in amazement as one of the academy's most feared students laughed at Jake's jokes about space cows. Change was coming to the Valkyrie Academy, whether the galaxy was ready for it or not, and Jake Miller, the farm boy who had entered the most perilous girl class in the galaxy, was still smiling. The final crucible began on a gray morning when transport ships carried all senior students to Thanatos 9. Jake looked out the window at the planet below and understood why so many students never came back. Thanatos 9 looked like death itself. The surface was covered in twisted black forests, poisonous swamps, and mountains that seemed to move on their own. Lightning storms raged across purple skies, and Jake could see creatures the size of buildings hunting in the distance. 30 days, Commander Kane announced to the students. Reach the extraction point on the northern continent or die trying. No weapons except what you can make. No food except what you can find. No help except what you can earn. She looked directly at Jake. The planet will test everything you have learned. Many of you will discover it wasn't enough. The students were dropped at different locations across the planet. Jake's pod crashed into a forest where the trees had thorns instead of leaves, and the ground moved like it was breathing. Jake climbed out of his pod and looked around. Everything was trying to kill him. The air itself felt hungry. In the distance, something roared like an angry mountain. "Well," Jake said to himself, "this should be interesting." He started walking north toward the extraction point 300 miles away. According to his training, he should find shelter, locate water, and avoid the planet's predators. Jake had different plans. On his second day, he discovered he wasn't alone. 3 students were following him: Rage Blackfire, Crystal Montenegro, and a girl he didn't recognize with silver skin and no name patches on her uniform. Jake pretended not to notice them while they stalked him through the deadly forest. But when they attacked on the 3rd night, he was ready. Rage came first, her volcanic skin glowing red-hot as she charged. Her touch could melt steel, and she was fast despite her size. "Nothing personal, human," she said as she swung her molten fist at Jake's head. Jake rolled sideways and grabbed a branch from one of the thorn trees. The thorns cut his hands, but he held on and used the branch to pole vault over a pool of acid that was trying to digest his feet. "Actually, it feels pretty personal," Jake called back. Crystal attacked next, dropping the temperature around Jake to below freezing. Ice formed on his breath as he ran between the moving trees. "You don't belong here," Crystal said, her voice like winter wind. "Humans are too weak for warrior training." "Maybe," Jake replied, using his own shivering to shake poisonous insects off his clothes. "But we're really good at adapting." The 3rd attacker was the most dangerous. The silver-skinned girl moved like liquid metal, changing shape to avoid obstacles and attacks. When she formed her arm into a blade and swung at Jake's neck, he barely ducked in time. "I am Liquid Death," she said. "I have killed 17 warriors in single combat." "Nice to meet you," Jake gasped, using a vine to swing across a pit filled with snapping creatures. "I've killed 0 warriors, but I'm really good at not dying." For 3 days, the chase continued across Thanatos 9's nightmare landscape. Jake stayed ahead of his hunters by doing things no warrior had ever tried before. When Rage cornered him in a canyon, Jake didn't fight her. Instead, he led her to a nest of crystal spiders that fed on heat. The spiders swarmed Rage, draining her volcanic energy until she collapsed from exhaustion. When Crystal tried to freeze him in an ice cave, Jake started a fire using his own torn clothing and some explosive fungus. But instead of using the fire as a weapon, he shared the warmth with Crystal, who was nearly as cold as he was. "Why are you helping me?" Crystal asked through chattering teeth. "Because being cold sucks," Jake replied. "And I don't think you really want to kill me. I think someone ordered you to." Crystal was quiet for a long time. Then she started to cry. "My government said if I failed this mission, they would exile my family." "That's not fair," Jake said. "Want to talk about it?" By the end of the conversation, Crystal had decided that maybe killing Jake wasn't worth destroying her own soul. That left Liquid Death, who was by far the most dangerous. She could become any shape, survive any attack, and her reflexes were faster than Jake could see. When she finally cornered Jake on a cliff overlooking a valley of carnivorous plants, Jake was exhausted, bleeding, and out of tricks. "End of the line, human," Liquid Death said, forming both arms into razor-sharp blades. "Any last words?" Jake sat down on the edge of the cliff and looked out at the deadly valley below. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt truly defeated. "Yeah, actually," he said. "I'm curious about something. What's your real name?" Liquid Death hesitated. "What?" "Your real name. Liquid Death is obviously a combat name. What did your parents call you?" That's not important. It is to me. I'm about to die and I'd like to know the name of the person who killed me." Liquid Death's blades wavered. "Silver. My name is Silver." "That's a pretty name. Why did you become an assassin, Silver?" "I don't have to answer your questions." "No, you don't. But I'm genuinely curious. You're obviously skilled enough to do anything you want. Why choose killing?" Silver's shape began to shift nervously. "Because it's what I'm good at." "Being good at something doesn't mean you have to do it," Jake said. "I'm good at farming, but I'm here instead of growing corn. Sometimes we get to choose our path. You don't understand. My people don't get choices. We're created for specific purposes." Jake looked at Silver with genuine sadness. "That's horrible. No one should have their life decided for them before they're even born." Silver's blades completely disappeared. You feel sorry for me?" "Yes. Not because you're trying to kill me, but because someone took away your right to choose who you wanted to be." For the first time in her life, Silver experienced something she had never felt before: compassion from someone she was supposed to kill. "I don't understand you," she whispered. "That's okay. Would you like to sit down and talk about it? The valley's pretty, in a terrifying kind of way." Silver sat down next to Jake on the cliff. "You know I could still kill you." "Yes, but you could also choose not to. That's what makes it a choice." They sat in silence for a while, watching the carnivorous plants below wave in the poisonous breeze. "What happens if I don't complete my mission?" Silver asked. "I don't know." "But what happens if you do? Will killing me make you happy?" Silver thought about this. "No. It will just make me what I was designed to be." "Then maybe it's time to design yourself." When rescue ships arrived at the extraction point 30 days later, they found something unprecedented. Not only had Jake survived the final crucible, but he had convinced his 3 assassins to help him reach the extraction point safely. Rage had used her heat powers to keep them warm during cold nights. Crystal had created ice bridges across dangerous rivers. Silver had scouted ahead for threats and found safe paths through the worst areas. "This is impossible," Commander Kane said as she watched the 4 students emerge from the wilderness together. "They were sent to kill you." "They changed their minds," Jake said simply. "People don't just change their minds about assassination missions. People can change their minds about anything, if you give them a good reason." When word reached the Galactic Coalition leadership, the political earthquakes were immediate. 3 different governments had to explain why their secret assassination missions had failed. More importantly, they had to explain why their assassins were now requesting transfers to work with human diplomatic teams. Admiral Stone called an emergency meeting. "The human has done more than survive impossible odds," she announced. "He has turned enemy assassins into allies. This demonstrates a level of psychological warfare capability that we must take seriously." General Vex was furious. "It demonstrates dangerous thinking that could undermine military discipline throughout the galaxy." "Or," said Ambassador Trill quietly, "it demonstrates that humans might have something to teach us about conflict resolution." The debate raged for hours, but the conclusion was inevitable. Jake Miller had proven that human methods could work even in the most extreme circumstances. When Jake returned to the Valkyrie Academy, he found a celebration waiting for him. Students from all species gathered in the main hall cheering for the farm boy who had not only survived the galaxy's deadliest test, but had made friends with his would-be killers. "Speech!" someone yelled. Jake looked out at the crowd of alien warriors who had become his friends and classmates. 6 months ago, most of them had wanted him dead. Now they were cheering for him. "I don't have much to say," Jake began. "When I came here, I thought I was supposed to prove that humans could be warriors. But I learned something different. I learned that the best warriors aren't the ones who win fights. They're the ones who figure out how to avoid fights in the first place." He paused and looked around the room. "Everyone here is strong and brave and talented, but the thing that makes you truly dangerous isn't your powers or your weapons. It's your ability to choose kindness when being cruel would be easier." The applause was thunderous. Later that night, Jake stood in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. Zara found him there as he had hoped she would. "So what happens now?" she asked. "Now I graduate, I guess. Then I go home and help prepare other humans for life in the galaxy. Will you miss this place?" Jake smiled his biggest smile yet. "I'll miss the people. But I think the real adventure is just beginning." "How so?" "Well, if one human can